Well, I made some mistakes and I want to talk about it. But let me ask this question first. What's more important to you? Being comfortable on trail or having the lightest pack possible? And the follow-up question to that is, can you have both? Now, I recognize that the answer to that question is highly subjective, but I do think it's worth a discussion. Now, recently I went on an early fall backpacking trip to the high Uintas here in Utah. And ahead of the trip, I knew that the weather was going to be pretty fair, but overnight lows would be at or below freezing. And with that in mind, I wanted to carry the lightest pack possible, but try my best to not sacrifice comfort or safety or even some of the luxuries that I wanted to bring with me. And I have some regrets from that. I am carrying the lightest pack that I have carried in a long time with a total weight of 22 pounds with food and water. Is this gear loadout that I've got going to be comfortable and sufficient for the conditions that we are going to be experiencing? Or is it not going to be a good experience because I tried to save as much weight as possible? Now, my packing for this trip, I absolutely had the scale out and I was making my gear decisions based off of weight. And so I wonder if making those kind of decisions are really that smart, or does it put you into a trap of, I want to save as much weight as possible, and then you end up sacrificing things and now you're not as comfortable or as prepared as you could be or should be for a trip. Now, the key pieces of gear to focus on here have to do with my tent, my sleep system, and my layering system. But I also focused on other areas to reduce weight in my pack that I'll get into here a little bit later. Let's talk about my shelter and sleep system first, because I think that's one of the most important things that you carry in your backpack. You've got to have a place for protection. You've also got to have a way to sleep warm and be comfortable. So the tent that I'm using is the Durston Gear X-Mid Pro 1, and this will be my first night in this. I've used the two-person version and really enjoy it. For my sleep system, I've got the Big Agnes Zoom UL sleeping pad, and this is where I think I might have compromised too much in my sleep system. I know from experience that the Zoom UL does not work well when you get into freezing temperatures. Based off of the forecast for tonight, we are easily going to be down to low 30s, possibly high 20s. And so I'm a little nervous that I'm going to be cold on this pad, but I was just thinking, well, it's like 3 or 4 ounces of weight savings compared to the Tensor All Season that I've been testing. So let's give it a shot, save that weight, and see what happens. So I'll report on that in the morning. And then the sleeping bag I'm using is a brand new offering from Nemo that's not yet released, but this is called the Coda, and it is a temperature comfort rated at 20 degrees. So I have full confidence in that working out just fine. And then the Trekology Deluxe pillow, which I am excited about because it's got this little opening here on the back where I can shove my jacket or something for a little bit extra height, which for side sleeping, I like that. Now that night, as the sun went down, the temperature started to drop pretty quickly. And at around 8 p.m., when I got into the tent for the night, my Bluetooth thermometer was showing 34 degrees Fahrenheit. So insert mistake number 1.
All right, good morning. I don't have the best report for you. My pad selection was a poor choice. And in the sake of trying to save weight, I made the mistake of using the wrong pad because overnight low, and the current temperature right now is 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Just laying down on my pad, I can feel the cold ground through the pad. So that was a mistake. And just knowing the temperature, it would have been way smarter for me to just carry the extra 3 or 4 ounces to have a higher R value pad and just get better sleep that way. But the Coda sleeping bag is nice, comfortable, warm enough, but when you're compressing that down on the sleeping pad, not ideal. That's the report for the sleep system. And mistake number 2 that I am realizing with my gear system has to do with my layering. So for layers, I've got the Ultravitals Burial jacket, and then underneath the Ventus hoodie, and then I've got their altitude base layer, and it is not enough for being in the high 20s for temperatures. So that's another method of just thinking, yeah, I'll be okay. I'll be fine down to freezing, and I'm a little cold right now. So having just a little bit heavier jacket would have been the way to go. Just really am realizing that in conditions like this, early fall, that it's okay to carry a little bit extra weight to be comfortable and safe for that matter.
And for the record, I didn't freeze to death, but I had crossed the line of enjoying myself and having a good time to just being simply uncomfortable enough that it wasn't an awesome experience in that specific moment. But it wasn't all bad, because one area of my gear I was super stoked about, and it was how I approached my food, and it was just absolutely fantastic.
Now, usually I'll just take like an entire peak refuel bag and shove all of that food down and just deal with it. But where I'm not doing as many miles on this trip, I decided I'm not gonna need to replace as many calories. So I took one peak refuel meal and I split it in half, and I did that for 2 meals to make 4 meals. So 2 dinners, 2 breakfasts. And it has ended up being a fantastic way for me to get all of the food that I want. That was one way that I was like, I can save some weight and some space in my pack, and that has turned out to be really nice and more enjoyable instead of feeling super sick and just like bloated after I get done eating. So happy with that. The sun's finally coming up, so trying to warm up a bit here.
So we spent the day getting packed up and hiking on to our next campsite, and I spent some time while we were hiking just thinking about all of this. Like, does this really matter? And is the lesson here just absolutely trivial? I mean, it's just gear, right? And I think it's really easy when you're the type of person that focuses a lot of your energy on thinking about how to maximize the performance of your gear system to really analyze this stuff. But maybe take the perspective of a new backpacker. All that person might be thinking is, well, that kind of sucked, or I didn't like being cold, or I just simply slept bad. And I sure hope that next time I do this, it's not that way. But yeah, I do think that there is a nice balance you can achieve between saving weight, but also being as comfortable as possible with your gear. So I don't think that it's completely trivial, but when you head out on a trip, make notes on what is working well for you and what changes need to be made for the next time that makes it possible for you to have a better experience, especially in those areas that you made notes about. And sometimes that just comes from actually getting out on a trip with your gear and seeing how it performs.
Now here on my channel, I try really hard to not get too overly focused about being ultralight, saving as much weight as possible. I really want experience, and a quality, good experience to be the reason that you use the gear that you use and go out into the backcountry. And so the choices that I made for my gear on this trip, there were some things that I've done that I'm really excited about, like just very intentionally not bringing stuff sacks and all of the extra things that don't really need to be in the backpack. But it was a mistake in me looking at the sleeping pad, specifically the Zoom UL, and going, okay, I know it's going to be around freezing temperatures, but I got caught with the trap of I want to save weight, so I'm going to risk it and just see what happens. And I slept cold last night because of it. But in other areas, like I've got the Durston X Mid 1 Pro, and that has been a great sleeping experience. Other than I had really bad condensation this morning, that's something that's easy and pretty manageable to deal with. So yeah, there are some aspects that if I can save as much weight as possible, I'm going to try to do that. But I should not be compromising safety
or just overall comfort for a few ounces. I'd rather carry an extra pound just to be a little bit more comfortable and not be cold while I'm sleeping as well. So that's the takeaway from my analysis of things today.
Just waking up this morning. Yeah, it's been a great trip, minus a few really important things that would have added to my comfort a lot. That is my layering system. It's 35 degrees right now, and I wish I had just a slightly heavier coat. That would have made a big difference, as well as a better sleeping pad rated for the cold. I, again, slept cold last night and did not get great sleep. So that's the lessons learned. Thanks, Mark, for an awesome trip. But catch you on the next one, guys. See you later.